Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today I'm going to be working on a Daiwa reel. This is the A400RL. This is a very substantial reel. That 400, Daiwa just had a weird way of numbering their reels, because this is very much a 60 size or 70 size reel by today's standards. It's very sluggish. This one is a product of the 1980s, I believe. The reel has got a couple of functions that would kind of say that. One of them is that the bail does not have an internal trip, but rather relies on the stud on the back of the reel arm. And what will happen is it'll come over here and it'll bang it, and that'll cause it to flip. Well, we're going to take this reel apart completely. It's got a lot of blistering and cosmetic issues to it, but it's a nice reel underneath. It's solid. And we're going to clean up the old greases and oils. I'm going to get this reel out there fishing again. I'm going to start by taking off the spool assembly. You'll get your first look inside in terms of what the reel looks like. There is some dirt in there. Pretty clean underneath the spool, but the dirt will have to be cleaned up as part of our service. Next, what you want to do is you want to check the non-handle side of the reel, because some manufacturers, well, they use a handle that is a throughput handle, and they hide a screw under here. And Daiwa happens to be one of those manufacturers. In this case, this is not a reel that uses that, which means that the handle is screwed into the main gear, and that you can remove that handle by turning it in the opposite direction that you retrieve the line. So if this is your retrieve, you're going to remove the handle by turning it in the opposite direction. Now I can see that there's a lot of dirt and debris on here, so we're going to want to do some cleanup in addition to the service of the reel. And well, this one has blistering on the metal finish. The rest of it is kind of bubbled paint, which is also kind of telling you the era that the reel was made. And in particular, the reels that were made in Japan and Hong Kong by the likes of Ryobi and Daiwa, and Penn made the Silver Series over there, and some of the others, they just didn't have that quality of finish that the later reels have. All right, there is an oil port on this handle knob. We can go ahead and put a drop of oil in there and spin it around. And I think, for the most part, using penetrating oil there has helped with some of the dirt and debris off of that. This is probably frozen at this point. It appears to be. So we're just going to let that sleeping dog lie. But at one point this was an adjustable handle where this would have slid out, enabled you to collapse that handle. When I take my pieces and parts off, I put them into a parts tray. I recommend that you have a strategy for how you're going to be dealing with the parts that you remove. All right, this is an older reel, so I'm going to use some penetrating oil at the base of the screws before I attempt to remove them. And let's see if we can't get those out now. Sometimes you get lucky. Sometimes the older reels that haven't been serviced in some time, maybe they've been shelf sitters, maybe they've been stored in a shed, maybe hanging in the rafters of a basement. Well, they gather dust and debris. They sometimes haven't been cleaned before they've been put into storage. And those screws tend to rust into or get trapped in those metal bodies. And this is a metal bodied reel. Okay, I'm going to take this one off, and that'll be the way to remove that case. There's 3 screws. When I take them off and put them into my parts tray, I want to make sure that they're all the same size. Those were. If there's one size screw that's different from the others, just note the location of that so that when you go to reinstall, you know where to put that. All right, we're going to remove the case now. This one kind of has a main gear that's trapped in there. That's something of a shame. But what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to come behind that main gear with a lever, just kind of pull it out that way. This has a case that they utilize as the bushing in the reel. So there is no separate ball bearing or bushing. It's simply the inside of the case. When you find that, you need to make sure that it gets cleaned, and in some cases you may have to run a little circular file through there to knock off any burrs. I think what's slowing the reel here is that old dry grease that was sitting in the bushing. And you can see the copper or the brass insert inside of this metal case. With that off, the next thing we want to do is remove the axle shaft so that we can do a nice cleaning inside. As I mentioned, this is a very, very sluggish reel, and the way around that is to clean it up, get it properly oiled and greased again, and get it reassembled so that it can go fishing. Take a picture. Notice the orientation on this crosswind block, because when you go to reinstall, it may be possible to put it in upside down. You don't want to do that, of course. We've removed the screw. Hopefully we're going to be able to get this axle shaft out. Kind of sort of out of there. And this is what happens when wheels sit for a while. They do become a little difficult to pull the pieces and parts out of. You can see all the dirt and debris and the like that's on the inside of this shaft. So some of that problem with the performance may have actually been this old dry grease bottoming out on the rotor base. Right. Let's go ahead and knock that off. Now there are some things you're going to be able to do and some things you won't be able to do. One of the things that you're not able to do is to fix plating and the like that's become tarnished or worn off, but you can smooth it out and make sure that there are no burrs. You can knock the burrs off if that becomes problematic. Here's your main gear. We should be able to remove that next. Again, the dried grease is the telling story of why this reel was not functioning very well, and I can just speculate based on my experience with reels like this that once we clean this up and we re-grease and re-lube, this thing will be a champ, just like it was the day that it was made. Alright, you can just see this has got all kinds of debris on there. And again, I use those penetrating oil as a degreaser and the like. While I'm doing the cleanup here, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel. Use that notification button to let you know when I'm posting. And, well, if you like the video, please leave the likes there as well. These reels do not take a long time to service. One of the things that's nice about that is you should be able to service your reel regularly. What does regularly mean? Well, it all depends on how much you use the reel. If you're not using the reel much, once a year is fine. And it should be once a year regardless. So some folks say, well, I only used it twice last season. Doesn't make sense for me to clean it up. Oh yes, it does. You're seeing evidence of that here. The greases that are in the reel will dry. Dirt and debris will clog the systems. And at the end of the day, you'll have a poor performing reel the next time that you go to use it because you didn't take the opportunity to clean it when you were in the off season or when it was convenient. And well, this is an indication of what happens in that situation. Okay. Inspect all of the teeth on your oscillation gear. I'm going to run that bristle brush through a green gear to get the old grease out of there. Inspecting the teeth as we go along. And if there's some really old grease in there, just use a pick. Bring that through to ensure that you've got all of those valleys cleaned out. Otherwise, it's kind of like hitting a speed bump when you start retrieving. You're cranking the reel and you kind of get a thump or a little bit of an inconsistency rather than just a nice free-flowing retrieve. When you take a look at the teeth. Make sure you're also looking at the teeth on the back. That's what's going to intersect with that oscillation gear that we were just working on. All right, got a little bit more to do here. Some stubborn grease hiding in the back of this case. Boy, did that dry up. Wow. So my guess is it's been a while since this reel has been serviced. So take your time. It's not a race. You don't win anything for finishing first. You do win with worry-free fishing for finishing properly. All right, there's even a pile of grease over here on the side of the case. How did that get there, you may wonder? Centrifugal force. As you're spinning your reel, the grease that's on the main gears gets thrown off. And, well, that's where it winds up. Check to make sure your post is working. Here's a case where I'm going to use a little bit of steel wool for that post. Kind of hard to do it any other way. But 4O, which is ultra-fine steel wool, will help clean that up. It's kind of like what a Brillo pad is made out of. I think Brillo pad may just be a next grade up in terms of abrasiveness. But if you have all these things at your disposal, you should take advantage of it and use it accordingly. All right, I think that might be a 12mm nut here. So we're going to remove that next. Let's take a look at what's underneath. Pull up and out on the rotor. There we go. A pretty straight up setup here. We have our anti-reverse dog. Where's the ratchet, you ask? Well, the ratchet's right here underneath. So that means when you go to reinstall this, we need to have that anti-reverse dog in the off position. Otherwise, you'll trap that anti-reverse dog and not, it looks like some kind of a bushing there, or a washer. Put that back on, it goes bearing shield. So turn that off right now. How do you turn it off? It's that lever again. See how that pulled it out and away? Those pieces here for a moment. Most of my pieces and parts have gone into that parts tray. When I get down to the 2 or 3 pieces that I'm using that are on the front end or the top end of this reel, sometimes I risk just leaving them on my bench. The risk is you're going to get a little sloppy, knock one off somewhere, and the next thing you know, well, you're playing Sherlock Holmes, hunting for where did that piece go. So the safe spot is the parts tray, out of harm's way. Be aware or be advised if you're doing something else. Let's see if we can get this out. Once you remove the assembly, take the bushing off to the side, spray the pinion gear with some penetrating oil so that you can come in and work through those channels there. I'm noticing that there's a lot of debris in here. That's old dried grease. And that's exactly what I was feeling when I was testing this reel. It was very slow. Well, you've got to get the grease out of there in order to have this work efficiently. The first thing I'll do is I'll scrape it. I'm going to bring that hard brush through again. And I'm inspecting the teeth and the channels inside those teeth as I clean that up. This is a bushing, not a bearing. A little bit of a surprise there. It looked like a bearing when I was taking it off. And we can start the reassembly here. I'm going to take some grease, a little bit where that bushing track is going to be. And then a good amount of grease into the pinion gear itself. With that in, the next thing we can do is reseat our bushing. Bring the bushing, oh, we want to clean that case out. I don't think I had the opportunity to get under there. We know that there's a little bit more of the old greases in there. We can see it. And you can see why the performance of this reel had deteriorated. All that old grease, while it helps initially, when it starts to dry, it's your enemy. Not only that, the old greases and oils attract dirt, hold it, and then that dirt becomes abrasive. All right, I think we did a pretty good job there. One more little piece inside the case here. There we go. And same thing on this side. We have a case with a inset there that's acting as the bushing on the back end. Take your assembly, bring that in. Time to bring our cover over. And I did put those 3 screws into my parts tray, so let's go into the parts tray and grab those 3 screws now. And I don't generally have a lot of luck with these small screws, so I'm going to use a dab of grease on my Phillips head screwdriver to hold that while I try to align and get those started. Well, there's 2 more to put in there, so don't tighten them down all the way until you have a chance to get them started. You may need to swing that collar one way or another. That's the second. Still have a little bit of grease left on there as a starter, so that's helping me there. Okay, very good. Then we have that little shim set here, top of the bush. Now remember what I said, this has got to be in the off position. If it's not in the off position, you won't get the rotor on all the way because it'll be bouncing up against that ratchet. Wow, that's a little tight there. Grab your rotor nut and put that back on. Okay, nice and tight. Give that a spin, that's where it's going to hit here. Let's make sure we oil that up good. And you want to work that so it has a nice flip to it. And when it comes, there you go, now we got it. When it comes around, it's going to hit this. That's going to trip it. All right, continuing on, oscillation gear goes next. This gets grease everywhere. It gets grease on the teeth, on the back side where it's going to run against the case, on the front side where that crosswind block is going to ride. Very popular little piece, plays in everything. Set that up. Next then is the main gear. Again, we want to restore the grease that we took out. I have no doubt this reel is going to work just fine. Bring back some of its former glory. So what have we learned so far? It's a big reel, has no bearings in it, made in the late 70s, early 80s, and well, pretty substantial in terms of a reel. Nothing wrong with the technologies here. Back end of your crosswind block gets grease. Make sure you put the stud in that groove of that crosswind block. If you don't, you're going to trap the gear and it won't work. Next thing goes your main gear. Again, we've cleaned our axle shaft already. You can put a light coat of grease onto this. You don't need to put much on because when you come through the top end here, it'll scrape it off when you go through that thing. Remember when we put the cotton swab through there? Well, the same thing will happen. It'll just push any grease out that happens to be there. All right. Just trying to align the holes here. Next up is the flat tapered screw that's going to hold that axle shaft in place. If you want to see how it's going to operate at this point, you can turn it and make sure that it's going to turn. It is. I don't like to do that too much without the side plate on because that's where the bushing. So let's put a little bit of grease onto the main gear. I'm noticing there is a little bit of dirt on the inner side here. We can get that out. Bring your side plate on. Make sure it snaps in place. If it doesn't do that, back it off. Don't force anything. We've got our 3 screws. They're all the same. One in each of the screw holes. And because it's triangulated, it really doesn't matter which pattern you use to tighten the screws down. If it had 4, I would kind of go in an X pattern just to spread the torsion on the case. This one doesn't matter. Alright, one more screw will service the spool. We'll see how we did. My guess is that this is going to work a whole lot easier. We saw why that should be the case. We've removed an awful lot of dirt, debris, and dried greases. We put in fresh. We've cleared the channel in the gears. So everything should work much better. These reels could be used in deep water. You could use this in an ocean. You can use this in the Great Lakes environment. You can use it in any deep lake environment. You can use this reel for catfishing. As I mentioned, it's probably by today's standards, it's a 60 size reel. For some reason, they wanted to call this a 400 size. Guess that's their prerogative. They made the reel. All right, let's put the handle back on. And let's go over and service the spool. One more thing to do here. I'm not sure. I'm thinking that this is going to have Teflon washers in it. It's been a while since I've done one of these. Just run a pick behind that 5-sided clip. It's seated in the groove. And let's see what we have in here. Well, we have Teflon washers. Well, much like the rest of this reel, now the last washer is actually kind of a rubber-based washer, or leather. That one I'm going to put some grease on. You don't need to grease the Teflon washers because, well, they can't absorb it. So that really doesn't matter too much. I'm going to wad up a paper towel to get all that dirt and debris out of that cavity. So when you're reeling, the line is coming around the outside of this spool and going onto the spool. While that line is wet and it collects in this bowl. When it collects in this bowl, it drains down, drains on your drag washers, and that limits the performance of the drag washer. So we need to go in and clean it out, which is what we're doing here. You can see the old dirt on this one. And you want to notice on these that this axle shaft is actually in kind of a D shape. So when you put this on, make sure that you have that sort of in the same direction when you get ready for the reinstall of that axle shaft. All right, cleaning this one up. If you can do this with a paper towel, that's wonderful. If you need something more, like a piece of steel wool or something, go ahead and do that. eared washer goes in the second slot. Then the other one that looks like the letter D internally is the last one that gets installed after the second of the top washers, the letter D. So line that up the same way you had the other one lined up. It'll make it easier when you go to put that back on the axle shaft. And then find the groove so that you can seat your clip. Hold it because it is a spring clip and it will fly on you from time to time, so make sure that you've got a good grasp on that. Find the flat side, that's where this is going to be an advantage to you. Bring that in and over, and then we can install the adjuster. Okay, let's take that glove off, get some of the tools out of the way. Let's do that test. What did we do? We took this reel apart completely. We found out that the reel was clogged with dirt and debris. It made it for a very slow and poorly performing reel. We took the opportunity to clean everything up. It actually looks pretty good, even though it's got the bubbling and some of the cosmetic issues. Inside, we know it's all set up right now. We showed you this is a reel that does not have any ball bearings in it, but still is a substantial reel meant for large fish. We explained to you how the bail system works by opening up and hitting the side. Showed you the critical points to clean and re-lubricate. Now let's give it a test. Well, nice smooth operating reel. Very nice. Put that clicker on. Ah, that's the sound of quality. It's music to the ears of anybody fishing in the 70s and the 80s. All right, let's make sure that bail flips. This one's ready to go fishing again. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. Before I leave, I want to thank our first responders, our police, fire, safety, rescue, and everybody involved in keeping us out of harm's way. I want to thank you, the viewer, for making this channel what it is. Remember to subscribe if you haven't subscribed, to like the video if you've enjoyed that, and to stay watching for the episodes to come. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, wishing you a great day.